I'm going to keep highlighting the nonsensical nature of the Trump administration because they are literally dumb. They're literally dumb. They talk about the fact that they want more babies, but then everything that they do as far as executive orders and policies that they're trying to get passed says that they want to make families absolutely miserable. So I'm going to talk about this article from ProPublica. They really dug deep into what they are doing in this nonsensical, absolutely asinine Trump administration. All right, the article. The Trump administration war on children. The administration is quietly putting America's children at risk by cutting funds and manpower for investigating child abuse, enforcing child support payments, providing child care, and much more. The clear cutting across federal government under Trump has been dramatic, with mass terminations, the suspension of decades old programs, and the neutering of entire agencies. But the spectacle has obscured a series of moves by the administration that could profoundly harm some of the most vulnerable people in the United States: children. Consider the staff of a program that helps millions of poor families keep the electricity on, in part so that babies don't die from extreme heat or cold, have all been fired. The federal office that oversees the enforcement of child support payments has been hollowed out. Head Start preschools, which teach toddlers their ABCs and feed them healthy meals, will likely be forced to shut down en masse, some as soon as May 1st. And funding for investigating child SA and internet crimes against children, responding to reports of missing children, and preventing youth violence has been withdrawn indefinitely. The administration has laid off thousands of workers from coast to coast who has supervised education, child care, child support, and child protective services systems, and it has blocked or delayed billions of dollars in funding for things like school meals and school safety. These stark reductions have been centered in little-known children's services offices housed within a behemoth agencies such as the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Justice, office with names like Children's Bureau, the Office of Family Assistance, and the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. In part because of their obscurity, the slashing has gone relatively overlooked. Everyone's been talking about what the Trump administration and DOJ have been doing, but no one seems to be talking about how, in a lot of ways, it's been an assault on kids, said Bruce Leslie, president of Advocacy group First Focus on Children. He added that the cabinet agency that they're fully decimating is the kid one, referring to Trump's goal of shuttering the Department of Education. Already some 2,000 staffers have lost their jobs. The impact of these cuts will be felt far beyond Washington, rippling out to thousands of state and local agencies serving children nationwide. The Department of Education, for instance, has rescinded as much as $3 billion in pandemic recovery funding for schools, which would have been used for everything from tutoring services for Maryland students who've fallen behind to making air safer to breathe and the water safer to drink for students in Flint, Michigan. The Department of Agriculture, meanwhile, has canceled $660 million in promised grants to farm-to-school programs, which have been providing fresh meat and produce to school cafeterias while supporting small farmers. At the Department of Health and Human Services, RFK Jr., the agency's secretary, has dismissed all of the staff that distributed $1.7 billion annually in social services block grant money, which many states have long depended on to be able to run their child welfare, foster care, and adoption systems, including birth family visitation, caseworker training, and more. The grants also fund daycare, counseling, and disability services for kids. It's unclear whether anyone remains at HHS who would know how to get all of that funding out the door, or whether it will now be administered by White House appointees. Head Start will be especially affected in the wake of Kennedy's mass firings of the Office of Head Start regional staff and news that the president's draft budget proposes eliminating funding for the program altogether. That will leave 1 million working class parents who rely on Head Start not only for pre-K education, but also for childcare, particularly in rural areas with nowhere to send their kids during the day. Some local Head Start programs are already having to close their doors, and many program directors are encountering impediments to spending their current budgets. When they seek reimbursement after paying their teachers or purchasing school supplies, they're being directed to a new Defend the Spend Doge website asking them to justify each item, even though the spending has already been appropriated by Congress and audited by nonpartisan civil servants. Next on the chopping block, it appears, is Medicaid, which serves children in greater numbers than any other age group. If Republicans in Congress go through with the cuts they've been discussing and Trump signs those cuts into law, kids from lower and middle class families across the United States will lose access to health care at their schools and foster cares for their disabilities or cancer treatment. Remember when he did that whole display of that child with cancer at the State of the Union address? But now they are cutting funding for cancer treatment. The Trump administration has touted the president's record of protecting America's children, asserting in a recent post that Trump will never stop fighting for their right to a healthy, productive upbringing. The statement listed 5 examples of that commitment. 4 were related to transgender issues, including making the U.S. government policy that there are only 2 sexes and keeping trans athletes out of women's sports. The other was a ban on the COVID-19 vaccine mandates at school that received federal funding. The White House and multiple agencies declined to respond to most of ProPublica's questions. Maddie Biderman, a Department of Education spokesperson, addressed the elimination of pandemic recovery funding, saying that COVID is over and that the Biden administration established an irresponsible precedent by extending the deadline to spend these funds and exceeding their original purpose. And the department will reconsider extensions if individual projects show a clear connection between COVID and student learning. An HHS spokesperson, in response to ProPublica's questions about cuts to children's programs across that agency, sent a short statement saying that the department, guided by Trump, is restructuring with a focus on cutting wasteful bureaucracy. The offices serving children, the statement said, will be merged into a newly established Administration for Healthy America. It's not established yet, but we're still going to be doing the work. Kinda, probably. Programs that serve kids have historically fared the worst when those in power are looking for ways to cut the budget. That's in part because kids can't vote, and they typically don't belong to political organizations. International aid groups, another constituency devastated by Trump's policy agenda, also can't say that they represent many U.S. voters. This dynamic may be part of why cuts on the health side of the Department of Health and Human Services, layoffs of doctors, medical researchers, and the like, have received more political and press attention than those on the human services side, where the Administration for Children and Families is located. That's where you can find the Office of Child Support Services, the Office of Head Start, the Office of Child Care, which promotes minimum health and safety standards for child care programs nationally and helps states reduce the cost of child care for families, the Office of Family Assistance, which helps states administer direct aid to lower income parents and kids, the Children's Bureau, which oversees child protective services, foster care, and adoption, and the Family and Youth Services Bureau, which aids runaway and homeless teens, among others. All told, these programs have seen staffs cut from 2,400 employees as of January to 1,500 now, according to a shared Google document that is being regularly updated by former HHS officials. Neither the White House nor the agency leadership have released the exact numbers of cuts. Those losses have been most acutely felt in the agency's regional offices. 5 out of 10, which covering over 20 states, have been closed by the Trump administration. They were dissolved this month without notice to their own employees or to the local providers they worked with. It was these outposts that had monitored Head Start programs to make sure that they had fences around their playgrounds, gates at the top of their stairs, and enough staffing to keep an eye on even the most energetic little ones. It was also the regional staff who had helped child support programs modernize their computer systems and navigate federal law that allowed them, among other things, to be able to pass through more money to families instead of depositing it in state coffers to reimburse themselves for costs. With all this being stated, how are Republicans the most family-friendly party? Please tell me that, because what they are doing is going to decimate families and just people in general in these programs. Go ahead, join the conversation. Don't forget to like, comment, and share.